At any time during this evening, did it go through your mind that this was not a human being that you were beating?
Dan Lindsay's and T.J. Martin's documentary, LA 92, chronicles the beating of Rodney King by Los Angeles police officers and the LA riots of 1992.
So LA 92 kind of tells the story of not just Rodney King, but it goes back and it examines kind of police corruption and brutality in Los Angeles over a 20-year period that got us to LA 92.
The story of the Negro in America is the story of America. It is not a pretty story.
Other acclaimed documentaries have addressed racial injustice during the Black Lives Matter movement. One of them is Raoul Peck's I'm Not Your Negro, on what it means to be black in America. Another, Ava DuVernay's 13th, on mass incarceration of African Americans in the United States.
States were required to keep these prisons filled, even if nobody was committing a crime.
Feature films have also addressed racial injustice as early as the 1960s.
I would probably start with the film from 1967, Sidney Poitier, In the Heat of the Night. The famous scene in there, he of course plays a detective who comes from Philadelphia to help investigate a case down in Mississippi. And in the midst of his investigation, he encounters a Southern gentleman who, in the midst of the investigation, smacks him for being, I guess, too uppity. And Poitier smacks him back, which was probably the first time it was ever caught on film that there was this resistance.
Who told you to step on my sneakers? Who told you to walk on my side of the block? Who told you to be in my neighborhood?
In 1989, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, about racial tensions, clashes, and police brutality in a Brooklyn neighborhood, was one of the first dark satires on racial divide. The film has inspired a new generation of African-American filmmakers to advance the narrative.
You're gonna go to Frisco, right? See the fireworks?
In 2013, Black Panther filmmaker Ryan Coogler released his debut feature film, Fruitvale Station. The film chronicles the last day in the life of Oscar Grant, a 22-year-old African-American man who was arrested by Metro Transit police officers in Oakland, California, after reports of a fight in a crowded train on New Year's in 2009.
Right now!
Oscar was kneed in the head by a police officer while another shot him.
Oscar was a human being, and he didn't make it home to people who he loved, and that's kind of a tragedy that can't really be fixed. You know, can't really be fixed with a settlement or with the length of a sentence.
Fruitvale Station was released after the shooting death of African-American teenager Trayvon Martin by George Zimmerman in 2012, that sparked the hashtag movement Black Lives Matter. A year later, in 2014, Ava DuVernay's film Selma came out. The historical drama follows the 1965 voting rights march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Hosea Williams, and John Lewis. During the film screening, civil rights leader John Lewis drew a parallel between Selma and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Today, I think the young people and those not so young can learn from this film. They will learn not to give up, not to become bitter, never to hate, but to continue the struggle, because the struggle to redeem the soul of America is an ongoing struggle.
George Tillman's 2018 drama, The Hate You Give, offers a graphic portrayal of the shooting of a black teenager by a police officer after the young man is stopped for a traffic violation. The film led to conversations across the country among audiences and talk shows how African-American families have the so-called talk with their sons on how to behave if they are stopped by the police in order to avoid getting shot. The incident in the film is witnessed by Star Carter, a 16-year-old black student who becomes a voice in an uprising against police.
You know, there's video footage of these events happening, real time, you know, and we knew that this was going to be reflective of reality, and so I think that created a further weight in which we felt like it was our responsibility in order to honor these events and those who've been affected by it.
Penelope Poulou, VOA News, Washington.
Real tech, the back cat waited and sat, debated.